Hey folks, welcome to Tabletop Blueprint. I'm RP, and today we're going to be taking a look at a post that I saw from the CEO of Evil Hat Productions, Fred Hicks. He made a post on Blue Sky, which we're talking about things that I'm very passionate about. First, he's talking about tabletop role-playing game. So, I mean, if you're here, you know that I love that stuff, and you probably love it too. And he was also talking about virtual tabletop and software engineering in general. So if you don't know, I'm a software engineer during the day. So a lot of those things I'm very passionate about. And also, if you don't know, I have made my own VTT, and that's essentially how I got started into this hobby. But we're going to talk about this later. So what I'm going to do is I've just unrolled the post. I'm going to read through the post and give feedback, comments, add context, and things like that. So, all right, let's get started. Some real talk about providing VTT support as a publisher. I'm the guy who makes the Roll20 character sheets at Evil Hat. Because I'm a company founder, I don't need to charge the company for it. If I did, I'm not sure the company could afford it. I mean, that's a banger. That's a great way to start a thread, not gonna lie. So if you don't know who Fredix is, he's the co-founder of he's the CEO of Evil Ad Production. If you don't know Evil Ad, they're the people who made Fate. They're the people who made Monster of the Week and Blades in the Dark and the Blades in the Dark Deep Cut most recently, and also Deathmatch Island, Girl by Moonlight, and so many great games were made by this company and published by this company, actually. And Fred Hicks is also like a little bit of a fun fact. Like, I actually got to know Fred Hicks when I started making my own VTT. So a couple of years back, it was around the time of the pandemic. I wanted to play some tabletop role playing games with my friend. And at the time, I was playing Fate. And Fate is one of it was co-written by Fred Hicks. He wasn't just like the publisher. It's his words in the book, right? So I was a big fan of Fate, and when I started playing, there weren't really any VTTs that were out there that essentially worked well with the way that I wanted to interact with Fate. So I made my own. I'm a software engineer, so I just decided to make my own. I did it, I published it, and I open sourced it. So I took all the code, put it on GitHub, and made it free and open license. So anyone could contribute to the platform. So it wasn't a paid thing, right? I took the app, deployed it, and shared it on Reddit, on the Fate RPG subreddit. And people in there really started to fall in love with the app. And at its peak, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, it was around 3,000 to 4,000 monthly active users that were on the platform, which is quite incredible, right? So I know a lot about VTTs and how development for the actual platform goes, but also how to make character sheets for a VTT, and what you need to do to actually make one, right? So let's continue. Into it is full-time developer territory, solid JavaScript components, robust, sustainable HTML architecture, twisty-brained CSS development, and at this point, hundreds of hours of Roll20 Sheets code familiarity. I have all these skills because a chunk of my 10 years in website support and development meant I already had at least sufficient rudiment of that list to fill the remaining gaps that I took on my first project. So those skills represent 500K of salary paid experience over 10 years. Yeah, I mean, software engineering, is complicated. Anyone can kind of get started and write a bit of Python, a bit of JavaScript, and say a little hello world, right? But making an actual software, making a piece of software, making software that is sustainable and maintainable are two entirely different things. And there's been a lot of hype regarding platforms that are able to generate applications for you. But I think that those platforms essentially just make apps that cannot be maintained, right? They're kind of like one-off things, right? They're not sustainable. And yeah, you kind of have to just put yourself into it and learn how to make software, but also how to maintain it and make it scale, right? So it's definitely a slow and difficult learning curve. So every time we roll a D20 Sheets update or a new sheet, which are free for anyone, on the platform to use or paid module for their marketplace, often as a part of a crowdfunding campaign, we get a small number of folks shouting about how we need to support their other platforms of choice. So if you don't know about how Roll20 sheets are made, let me show you. So if you search for GitHub Roll20, so GitHub is this platform that you can use to essentially put code out there that is like freely available for people to look at. They also have like private packages, but that's another topic. But essentially on the Roll20 repository, let me make that smaller. In the Roll20 user, you can see the popular repositories, and one of them is the Roll20 character sheets. So those sheets are essentially all laid out in there. So there are folders for all the different games. So you can see like 24XX here for the SRD made by Jason Tochi. And if we go in there, what you're going to see is essentially HTML, CSS. Potentially there would be some JavaScript in there to handle interactivity. But that's a guess, right? I've never made one, but this is observation from like a software engineer, right? Some translation files, but this is all code. Like there is no UI for you to create a Roll20 character sheet. You need to go in there and create all the code for what the sheet, like the structure of the sheet, and then you need to write the styling, so the CSS, to make it look good. And if there's interactivity with the thing, like fields that are connected to one another, well, you need to write the JavaScript to connect those pieces together. And if the sheet is available in multiple languages, well, you will need to provide those languages as well. So the thing is, all of this is publicly available. So people can go in there and essentially make a package for Roll20, and they just like make all of this and make a merge request or a pull request that will get merged into the main repository, and then Roll20 can redeploy all the sheets and essentially support so many games because they allow external contributors to go in there and like allow the support of multiple games. So if I wanted, I could make a Stoneburner character sheets for Roll20, just go in there and hey, we can see the one by Binary Star Games that we recently interviewed on the channel, or we will interview depending on when the video comes out. But there's Apocalypse Frame. So you can see here like this folder where, yeah, here there's no JavaScript. So maybe it's handled differently. But yeah, like if we look at the preview here, you can see what a sheet looks like. It's all handled by the community. So you either, as a publisher, you either need to let the community handle it for you and make a sheet in there, or you make it yourself. But if you make it yourself, you need to be familiar with a lot of technologies. So let's continue. So we get a small number of folks shouting about how we need to support their other platforms of choice. So there are so many VTTs out there, right? Like we have like Roll20, but there's also like Foundry and a Playroll, and there's just like there was like one more multi-yours, like just so many of them. So obviously they all have their own ways of handling character sheets and their own process. So if you want to make something for one platform, it's not necessarily like a time investment that you can essentially reuse and just put into another platform for free. Like that work, you need to do it again. And I'm sure Fred is going to touch on that. We usually have to say no. The Roll20 work does not convey to other platforms. Yes, so some of the assets developed for Roll20 things can convey, but the real heart of it, creating a marketplace module, which I do have other folks do, and in my own extensive sheet work, do not convey at all. Roll20 is an absolute beast, commercially speaking. No surprise they merged with Drive-Thru. So yeah, like Roll20 bought Drive-Thru RPG a couple of years back, and they're like the biggest VTT out there, but they're also like one of the oldest. They've been here for a really long time, a bit like Roll20. So yeah, like I'm not surprised as well. So your favorite non-Roll20 VTT does not typically come remotely close to providing the level of effort, compensation, remuneration. So like one of the issue is that the TTRPG community is relatively niche, right? Compared to, for example, to the video game industry. Like there are not that many players and GMs, and like when you make something for Roll20 and someone asks you, well, can you support Foundry or can you support Playroll? Well, you need to learn how those platforms work as a publisher and make a sheet for it. how many people are actually going to use Playroll or use Foundry or even Roll20 to play your games? Are we talking hundreds, dozens, thousands? Like, my guess, and this is just like eyeballing, I'm not even sure there would be more than like 1,000 players using the Roll20 character sheet module for Blades in the Dark on Roll20. Maybe more than 1,000, but surely less than 5,000. Like surely less than that, because like as I said, we're kind of niche. There aren't that many players out there. We're not talking hundreds of thousands. Like when a new game come out, it's not like you go on Steam and there's like 2 million players already on it. That doesn't work like that. Or like playing a TTRPG takes time and investment. You need to learn a book and like learn the rules and then eventually gather players and then you start playing, right? So it's very like, if you get, let's say that you get 1,000 players on Roll20, well, maybe the investment in making the sheet makes sense now because those 1,000 players have a very good experience playing your game on Roll20. But if you get like 50 players on Foundry, well, it's not really worth it, right? To spend all that time and making a custom sheet for that platform if the number of players don't work out. And the number of players on all the different VTTs, everyone have their own preferences. And one thing that I've learned working on Fari, so Fari app is the VTT that I've developed, like they all have their own preferences. People really kind of either hate or love a VTT, and there is no in between. So yeah, I can totally understand where Fred is coming from, like making something for many VTTs and hoping that you would get a proper return on investment. And that's only if the VTT actually pays you. Like if the VTT allows, like let's say, for example, that you make a module for Foundry. Well, as far as I know, the modules in Foundry VTT are not paid. So if you play it, you're not actually giving any money to the publisher. You paid like, I don't know, $70 for your Foundry license as a GM. Players, I'm not sure they pay. And then the publisher doesn't make a dime. So they're just making it to help players play the game. But in terms of compensation, you're not getting anything in return. In other words, there is no real business case to be made that there's sufficient monetary incentive to make the investment of money and time needed to support it. So the way any non-Roll20 VTT gets support for our stuff is either that VTT contacts a publisher and negotiates a licensing deal where they develop the supporting materials, and we get a cut when they sell those things, assuming the VTT allows those things to be sold, right? Which not all VTTs support. Like you can go on Playroll, and then you can kind of find packages that people have made for third-party games, and you just download it, and it's free, right? So incentive is fine here because our effort is nil. So I guess this is what happened, and this is just a guess, but this is what happened, for example, probably with Blades in the Dark on One More Multiverse. Probably the One More Multiverse team was really excited about the game, and they contacted the Evil Hat, and they were like, we want to support Blades in the Dark, and we're going to give you a percentage of all the sales of people buying the Blades in the Dark module. So then they spent all the time making the game directly embedded inside Warmo Multiverse, created custom code and custom pixel assets and all of that. So like, I think this is what happened here, right? As a fan of that VTT a fan of that VTT puts in all the work to make those components, offer undercompensated for their work as a community effort, often for no pay product results. So there's little revenue to be gained. When they actually complete the work, you hope it doesn't become abandonware in 0 to 3 years. So this is what I mean by software that needs to be maintained. Like if like things get updated all the time, new libraries, new frameworks, like our operating system, web browsers. So when those things update, software often needs to be updated in pair with this. And if it doesn't, there's a chance it's going to break. And if it breaks, then you have something that's, well, abandoned and no one's going to maintain it. So yeah, like there are VTTs out there, like Evil Hat has made the official Blades in the Dark sheets for Roll20, but maybe they didn't make the one for Girl by Moonlight. I'm pretty sure they did, but let's assume they don't, and it was made by someone else. Well, like if that person doesn't want to work on that code anymore, it may start breaking, and then that's just not fun. In my own sphere of things, this means there are 3 classes at play. A, Roll20, where we can generate enough revenue to justify the invested effort. Modulo the fact that it'd be hard to affordably hire my skill set for my part of it. So yeah, so this would be the publisher as the skills and the knowledge to essentially make the sheets for a platform, but making that effort is worth it because there's going to be enough users and there's going to be enough revenue generated from that platform that it's going to make it worth it. The VTTs that do licensed in-house implementations. So I'm pretty sure this is where like platforms like One More Multiverse come in, or potentially like things like Alchemy. So Alchemy is this relatively new VTT, and they have like a lot of stuff from Free League and like all the like Alien and Blade Runner and all of that. And I'm I'm pretty sure that like Freely didn't go and created the sheets with Alchemy. I'm pretty sure Alchemy reached out because Free League is a big company, and Alchemy was like, okay, look, we're gonna do a license deal. We're gonna do all the sheets for all your games and make them look amazing, and we're gonna give you a cut of the revenue of people buying the sheets and the modules on the platform. And then everyone else who gets no support unless a community member successfully concepts, implements, and complete the work for that community, usually for free, sometimes without any plan on how to keep it sustainable across the many years as their platform continues to evolve. So, like, a good example of this is Bratless System Unofficial for Foundry. So, the author of this module option, like, they reached out to me and they were like, "Oh, do you want to like support Bratless on Foundry?" And I essentially told them, "Well, I don't own Foundry. I don't use it. So if you want to do so, Bratless is open license, so you're more than welcome to make a third party module for it, though you're not allowed to make money off of it, right? Like because Breathless is licensed for like the actual Breathless game, like the IP belongs to me. But if you want to make a free module, you can do so, right? And this is what they did. So if you take a look, like they made Breathless. Like you can see all the skills, the stress, the medkit. It's even using very nice fonts, and it looks gorgeous. And I'm pretty sure, like I know they added a bunch of settings in there to be able to support many Breathless games. So I think this is super cool. But if we take a look, the latest version was published a year ago. So is it because not a lot of people use it? Is it because they moved to something else? Is it because it's stable enough? But what happens if Foundry makes another update and this thing breaks? Well, it's possible that the community member that made this is not going to be interested in updating it because updating software costs time and energy and effort. So this is what Fred was talking about when he was talking about abandonware. So far, as far as I know, this thing is in good shape and it's working really well. But like those things, they need time and maintenance. Our Deep Cut crowdfund campaign, currently ongoing, launched with A. No surprise, we can make our money back with A, sticking to what we already know how to do. Today, we announced an upcoming Alchemy VTT support. This was only made possible by Alchemy falling into the B class. So yeah, this is Alchemy. Like honestly, from like a front end software engineer's perspective, that VTT looks gorgeous. And we've played it for when we played what was it? I think it was Blades in the Dark that we played at some point with my friends with this platform. It's really, really good. It's a super cool platform. I think only the GM has to pay the license. This video was not sponsored by them. I just really think that it looks gorgeous. But yeah, like Alchemy reached out to Evil Hat and said, we want to support Blades in the Dark, or we want to support Deep Cut, and we're going to give you a percentage of the cut and do all the development in-house. So that's pretty cool when it happens. And as often happens, one of the most common example of C-class requests popped up yet again. Do Foundry support. Y'all, I like Foundry too. I admire what its interface does. I think its model for detailing, building out maps, and the decentralized run your own server stuff is great. But C, do I have some of the skills needed to implement for Foundry? Maybe. I did look into it briefly back when I toyed around with Foundry for my own personal use. The time and skill investment needed struck me as an order of magnitude heavier than what it takes to offer Roll20 support for basically $0. Right, because you don't buy a module in Foundry, you just download them. Like we saw with Breathless, they're just available on GitHub, right? Maybe not of them. I'm not like an expert, but I think this is what they are. There's not a lot of demonstrated revenue potential in the C class in general. Foundry is no real exception there. In publishing, the money makes and many of the decisions. there is no money there. There's a strike against. If there is not an absolute ocean of paying users versus a puddle, strike two. Strike three usually comes in the form of fans of the C platform getting cranky about it and not getting any support on the same timetable and same quality level as A, which is, when you think about it, if a community member goes and makes something for like platforms like the C examples, well, of course they will not be as much detailed or look as great as the people making the examples for the sheets for like the examples of A and B, because in A it's the publisher and they're really invested into making it as close to the original game as possible. And with B, well, it's the platform who's very passionate about making the sheet a success because they're going to make money, and the publisher is also going to make money, and they want people to be driven to their platform because they like the publisher and they make great games. So with C, you need very invested fans. So it's not easy, and they need to update those sheets over time. So it's a tricky situation. Taking it in the teeth from folks who expect it to be easy for us to do when it super isn't. It's not much of an incentive either. TTRPG companies are almost all small. The quantity of and variety of VTTs out there to provide a favorable divisor on effort and attention when it comes to decide what to support and what not. We're lucky that we can support A, and we're happy when we hear from a B that can do the work. A CVTT simply can't be in the running because we, the company, are either a micro business or an individual. I mean, Fari is just me. So if someone comes in and say, "Can you support Roll20?" Well, either someone else is going to need to do it for me because I won't have the time or the incentives to do so. So that would be like falling into the C category. But yeah, like it's such a tricky situations because we often assume that because books can be, like, for example, the Stoneburner crowdfunding campaign, I think I printed over like 1,600 books, and it feels like a lot, right? But it's just me working with very great partners to be able to make it a reality. But I don't own a print, like a printing, like an industrial printing machine. That just like, I'm using services that make it look like the company is really big, but it's not. And even though, like, as far as I know, Evil Hat, it's not a big company. They make really cool games and they look super premium and they sell thousands and thousands of copies of their games. But the number of full-time employees working as at Evil Hat, I don't think it is what you think it is. I think it's really low, when like it's normal because like our hobby is like, well, if you make a game, it's possible that your crowdfunding campaign is going to do really well, but your next crowdfunding campaign may not. It's a risky business, right? So sometimes it's easier to just work with consultants that you trust, right? So you hire on demand, but you don't necessarily keep them on your payroll constantly. In other words, TTRPG companies are not software companies, full stop. Don't believe me that TTRPG companies aren't software companies? How well have Wizard of the Coast digital initiatives typically gone? Remember when they bought the perfectly Quadrillion Beyond off of a software company that already did the work? And that's Wizard of the Coast. So yeah, like Wizard of the Coast bought D&D Beyond, and yeah, Wizard of the Coast is a book publisher. They're game makers, right? Like, but they're not a software company. And I think they're working on a new VTT, but as far as I know, it's not been going very well. Software is complicated. Is there actually a way around the C thing? Well, like, I think that the C thing, the C example, the community members that come in and make third party modules for official games, I think that's a beautiful thing. I honestly think it is. And if you have a community that's very invested into your games and your products, like, the example C is going to happen, right? So if I go, so that's Fari, that's the VTT that I developed for a couple of years, and it is no longer being worked on or maintained because I shifted my focus on other things. That's a whole other topic. But if I go on my binder character, I'm going to click new. So this is the character sheet builder. I'm going to toggle off the advanced mode. So by default, it's empty, right? So I'm just going to write my character. And I'm going to click on the template here and I'm going to search for Stoneburner. Well, did I make a template for Stoneburner? I didn't. I'm bad. I'm so bad. So I'm going to load the breathless template. Here, we're using custom fonts and all of this. I made this template, right? But there's like 191 templates on this platform, and I probably made 1% of them. Like, for example, if I look at, let's look at Customizor by Diogo here. Like, I didn't make this template. A community member did because they were very passionate about what Diogo made with this game. And I think that's beautiful. And if the platform, the actual VTT, makes sure that all the community sheets still work, then I think it's a beautiful thing. I think it's amazing that like community members are empowered to create sheets for the platforms that they love, especially if making sheets is easy. I think the problem with Roll20 is that it gives too much customization. You can write custom HTML and custom CSS to customize everything. But if you create a framework that's probably not as flexible as going all in on customization, while it's way easier for the platform to maintain the sheets in the long run. For example, for the 191 sheets that I have in Fari app, I didn't have to update them anytime. I always made sure that the code supported all the previous versions of the sheet, and I had agreed on a data model, and I just followed through with that. When someone made a sheet, I just made sure that all the sheets worked using automated testing. But like, I think that the C examples that Fred is talking about is one of the most beautiful thing. But it's true that it can become abandonware. But that's when I think when platforms give too much customization to the sheet creators. In my opinion, the first C VTT that one creates a way to take a Roll20 character sheet and actually run all of its code on their non-Roll20 platform without requiring modifications to that code, and two, pairs that with a marketplace to sell stuff that I use will shine. I think this will be complicated. Roll20 has their own data models and their own ways of using sheets. And if someone makes a way to import a Roll20 character sheet into another platform, well, Roll20 could just decide to change their data model and then break the contract between Roll20 and the other platform who wants to migrate a sheet over. Like Roll20 doesn't owe any other VTT anything. They can just break stuff. So I think this is a hard sell. I don't think it would ever happen. Like importing character sheet from a module to another, like I don't think the incentives are in place. And I do think that Roll20 offers too much customization for sheets to stand the test of time, essentially. Because, and it's a bit like itch.io. On itch.io, you can go in there and customize the CSS of your pages. But then what if itch decides to change a class that is used on the page that we're using to customize our pages? Well, our CSS is going to break. So you either are frozen in time and cannot do anything because you're going to break all the sheets that people have made, or well, you just stay as it is, and then there's no innovation that can take place. That's a ton of effort. True. Yeah, I don't think it's just a ton of effort. I don't think it's an effort that is worth it. I don't think anyone has done it yet, and that may be why. I'm not saying that Roll20 sheet code is best in class. I work with it a ton, and it has its shortcomings and quirks. But the marketplace activity we can get going to monetize the effort to make the code makes it viable. That's for sure. If you have users that come in and buy the sheets, then the investment is worth it. A CVTT that can use AVTT stuff right from the jump would be a very, very small delta and a lot easier to justify doing a small percentage of additional effort to deploy there as well. So the path here is either to do something like this incentive scheme or instead launch the in-house effort to be more of a B. I think there's another alternative. I think one of the problems that I have with this quote here is that I don't think that many people actually care that much about making sheets for VTT in general, because a lot of creatives in this space are not software engineers and they're not software developers and they're not familiar with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And they will be way, way, way intimidated, like way too intimidated with the Roll20 scheme to actually do anything with Roll20. Like if Roll20 is like, oh yeah, you need to know CSS, HTML, and JavaScript, it's like, I'm not touching that. Like I want to drag and drop UI. I want to be able to say, I have a new field and I'm just going to link to this thing and whatever. So like, I think it's too intimidating. And I think like, yes, there are a lot of Roll20 sheets available on the Roll20 marketplace. My guess is that a lot of them are community made, so they fall more into the C scheme than the A scheme. So the path here is either to do something like this intensive scheme, or instead launch the in-house effort to be more of a B. I think that when TTRPG VTTs come to a publisher and say, we're going to make a sheet for you, I think that's great. I really think that's great. And I think that when community members come in and say, we're going to make a community sheet for this platform, I think that VTTs should be able to support them in the long run. But I think there's like another way that we could potentially benefit as an industry, is that when someone comes in and say, I'm going to make a sheet for that VTT, if a publisher is like, okay, well, I would love for you to do it, and maybe like if the VTT itself doesn't make it too complicated, and it's just like a relatively small learning curve, but still a learning curve that the publisher doesn't want to tackle, well, the publisher could just say, okay, you can do it. If it's not 50 hours of development, the publisher could come and say, okay, I will hire you and make it the official sheet for the game in that platform. But for the publisher to actually decide to hire that person and make it the official sheet and essentially hire them as a consultant, there needs to be an incentive for this to come back. Either like players are actually, like many hundreds of players are going to come and actually use the thing, or there's going to be like a monetary incentive back from the publisher, from the VTT that is going to pay the publisher. So one of the things that I've been toying around in recent months is the idea of maintainable and scalable character sheets that can be made by the community, but that aren't over engineered, right? And that aren't put behind a paywall. And one of the ways that I've done this is with Keeper. So if you don't know what Keeper is, it's a web platform that I maintain. And it does a couple of things. First of all, I think it has the best dice roller in the industry. I think it's the most amazing dice roller out there. So you can go in there and just click on all the dice, and you can click on individual dice and re-roll them, or you can highlight certain results, and then the total highest and lowest result will update. You can clear your pool, roll more dice, re-roll everything. I think it's amazing. You should try it out. But it's also a place where you can search for open licensed resources or free resources. So the Blades in the Dark SRD is available in there. So you click in there, and you have all the SRD of Blades in the Dark to make your own Blades in the Dark game. But one of the things I've been toying with is games. So let's say you wanted to play Mouse Ritter. Well, if you click in there, this is Mouse Ritter by Losing Games. There's a description, and there's assets that are included with this game. So if I go in there and I click character sheet, the sheet is read only. So this is just for you to see what kind of assets you get by using this module. And then you see some details. So like, okay, so like this is the name of my mouse and the background and the disposition and the code. And there are some stats and inventory and everything is in there. So like, okay, maybe I want to play this. So you click start a new campaign. And what this thing is that it's essentially an offline campaign / asset manager. So I could go in there and say Mouse Ritter campaign. And I say, I add a character sheet. So this is my character. So I'm just going to call it like Super Mouse. And then this is my character sheets for playing Mouse Ritter. So I can update my stats, and I can add some items in there. So I can add some usage. I could actually, I think there's a bug in there. It's an alpha program. Like I'm going to fix stuff. But essentially, all of this, if I update, for example, my background, and you can see here, like it was saying saving, and now it's saved. So it's all saved on your computer. It's not, I'm not paying for servers like to store all of this data, no databases. And I think this is a super cool concept, but offline character sheets aren't new. But I think that where it becomes very interesting is how those sheets are made. and how the community could come together and create new sheets without having to know any code, no JavaScript, no CSS, but just basic markup. And here's how it works. So if you click on the GitHub icon here at the top, it'll bring you to the repository. So once you're on GitHub, if I search for mouse reader and I look at the character sheet here, I click on the raw, I'm going to zoom in. This is just basic markup. What is the name of the asset? What game does it belong to? There's some image, that's fine, you don't need that. But then as a platform, instead of giving you access to JavaScript or CSS control, I just say, here are components that you can use. There are fields, there's a heading, you can make a row, you can make a stack, you can use different kind of fields like a text field and like a number field or a tracker. And the only thing that you have to do as a sheet creator is essentially list the kind of components that you want to use, give them a name. If you need to give them certain parameters, you can, but you're not required to. And when you do this, the platform, when it loads the sheet, like this one, like let me actually pull another one. Let me pull like the Songs and Sagas sheet. I'm going to start a new campaign. I'm going to add the character sheet. So this is the Songs and Sagas character sheet. So all of this is just basic markup, but the platform is going to be smart enough to actually create a separate entity for this and save it. So if I go in there and type my name, it's going to save it. So like there is no code that was involved. The platform is doing the heavy lifting. It's just basic markup. And I think this makes it so much more approachable for creators, publishers, and community members to make sheets for a VTT that isn't over the top, right? And when you're using like the Keeper campaign module, you can pull the dice roller, go back here, or like, and also like those things, I can make them interactive directly inside the app. So let's say, for example, like here, my inventory, I have one item, but if I right click, add below, I have another item. I can add below again, right? I could move this one up. So 1, 2, 3. I take this one, I move it up. So it's all interactive, but the actual person who made the sheet didn't have to do anything. It just works, right? And for example, in the library of assets for Songs and Sagas, you have the entire rules reference. So all the rules of the game are in there. And there's also rolling tables. So all the rolling tables, again, it's just basic markup that I'm using inside the app to be able to add interactivity. So this is just like, oh, it's a rolling table component and it has all those options. And then when the app renders, it's just going to look at this, render it, and then you're able to use rolling tables. And the cool thing about them is that all the results are saved. So let me just Songs and Sagas. And if I reload the page, check that out. I reload the page and I know all the assets that you added. I know the data that you've put in them. And if I go to rolling tables, I also know what you rolled in the past. So I just re-render it. So all of this is saved. And I think that a platform like this makes it so much easier for community members to make custom games or to make games for publishers than something as custom as Roll20. And I think it offers more flexibility using something like this than using something that is maybe UI drag and drop based like Playroll. So if you want to try it out, go on keeper.farryrpgs.com. I'm going to leave a link in the description of the video. But you can just go in there, scroll to the game section and play around with these. I want to add more. If you want to help me make games, like please go for it. Like there's like, I essentially just need a little file with basic markup. I need to write a wiki for all to use this, but I think this has a lot of potential. So yeah, I really liked what Fred is saying here. And I think he's pretty right about the state of things. Like it is so difficult for publishers to provide software support for their games. And I think we need better alternatives that are more community focused and like that essentially also could give back to publishers, right? To warrant the investment into them. So I don't think we're in a really good spot at the moment, but I am hopeful about the future because I think we need new solutions because those things, the way that we've been doing things, has been the same for so long, and I think we need to rethink the model of how we as TTRPG publishers work with virtual tabletops. Hope you liked the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It's really helping the channel grow, and it's been growing so much. So thank you all for watching. You should follow Fred. He's like posting on Blue Sky, and give a follow also to Evil Hat. They're like a great publisher. They make super cool games. So yeah, thanks for watching. Talk to you all later. Cheers.